everybody, Joe from Britical Saiyans here, and today I'm going through this Lord Slug deck profile. So, this is the Slug from set 12, before anyone asks. And his first auto is when this card attacks, you and your opponent draw a card. There's a lot of cards that are going to give your opponent cards because the deck relies on your opponent having 7 or more in their hand. So I'm just going to say that now. His secondary auto is if you have 3 or more green energy, when you activate Rejuvenate skill, you can draw 2 and then flip this card over. So instead of doing the standard awakening, you can just rejuvenate, draw 2 and go into the awakened side. However, his awakened skill is worth it because if you're on 4 or less, you and your opponent draw a card and then you get 2 of your energy back to active mode. So it gives you 2 energy and a draw, gives your opponent a draw so you set up, and you're good to carry on with your turn. So on this side he has the permanent of if your opponent has 7 or fewer cards in their hand, he gains minus 5k power during battles on your opponent's turn. So in your turn he's always 20k. If your opponent goes down to 7 or less cards, he becomes a 15k during their turn. When you attack, you both draw a card. And then his active main is once per turn, if your opponent has 10 or more cards in their hand, you can play up to 1 mono green Slug's army card with an energy cost of 2 or less from your drop area. So just gets you your little guys out, which are quite useful for the deck. So he's just actually a really good leader. But there we go. So moving on now, we'll start with the Unison card, which there is just the 4 copies of King Piccolo Dimensional Conqueror. I'm actually going to read one of the SRs because the SPR looks really nice. I'm not going to say it doesn't. It looks really nice. It's very well decorated, but it's hard to read. This is the problem with some of these SPRs. Is like they're so pretty, but they're so difficult to read. So yeah, like I said, there is the 4 of these. So he has Rejuvenate. So once per turn, if your lead is green and you remove 4 markers, you place a card from under this card into the drop, and then you place the top card of your deck in your life face down. And then he's got active main, you pay 1 green. If your lead card is mono green and your opponent has 7 more cards in hand, you can play this from your hand with a marker on it. However, you can't play using cards for a turn. So it's a way to get it out cheaper because it normally costs 2. The downside is if you do it without, you can't place 1 underneath because you can't play. And technically, place 1 under is playing 1. It's just one of the same card piece, so it just goes under. And he's got +1 active main. You choose 1 card in your hand and place it under this card. You and your opponent draw a card. Then you choose a green back card with an energy cost of 1 from your hand and play it. And then at the end of your turn, your opponent chooses up to 1 card in their hand and places it at the bottom of their deck. So they gain a card, but then they lose 1 at the end of turn, and you get to play a 1-drop for free. So, as a general Unison, he's very useful. It's just not as active outside of Slug because your opponent has to have a lot of cards in hand, so you're mostly relying on them to just draw and hold cards. But that's not really difficult in this game. So, moving on to the extra cards now, we have 4 copies of the 6-star ball Parasitic Darkness. So it's Dark Dragon Ball in all areas. It gives 5k during the battle. Just the bulk standard. And its active main is if your opponent has 3 or more energy and you choose a mono green Slug with an energy cost of 3 or 4 and place this card under it. So in this deck we got the Thwarter of Plans as a 3 and the Young Again as a 4. And that's it. So you place the Dragon Ball under 1 of them. You then get a 4-cost Slug Xeno, which is this guy. Place it on top in active mode from your deck or hand, and then shuffle your deck if you look through it. So much like every other Parasitic Darkness Dragon Ball, you just go into the Xeno version of your bad guy. And then we've got 2 copies of Sacrifice. So this one isn't very intricate, it's just negate the attack. However, if your leader is a Namekian card, when you activate the counter, you can pay a card from your life instead of using an energy to activate this card. Which obviously Lord Slug is in the Namekian, so it just becomes a free play counter, which is why I run it. I know you could run Shock and Death Ball, but I figured, you know what, it's in the Namekian, I'll just run Sacrifice. It's just as good. So, and then we have 2 copies of Homicidal Clones. So, this is counter attack. If the leader's mono green, negate the attack, and then you play 1 meta token. Meta tokens are 5k with a 0 cost 5k combo, and the token gains blocker. So you just get a free 5k blocker basically. And then if your life is at 5 or less, you can take a life to activate this card instead of paying the energy cost, which is good because it costs 2. So it means you can tap out and still have a counter and a blocker, which is really useful. And it just seemed appropriate to run it in Slug because it's Metamatcher. So, moving on now to the battle cards. We'll start with our 1-drops. So we've got 4 copies of, let me get it in frame, Lord Slug Conqueror Restored. So it's 1-drop 4k, it's got unique. It also is, if you lead a Slug's army card, when this card is played from your hand, you and your opponent draw a card, and at the end of your turn, your opponent places a card from their hand to the bottom of the deck. And its active main is, if you lead a Slug's army and your opponent has 7 more cards in hand, and 1 or more energy, you choose up to 1 mono green Slug's army card with 19k power or less in your hand, and play it, and then you can't activate the active main again for the turn. So you can't, it's unique, which means you can't have multiple really. But if you do have more than 1, it means you can only activate 1 of them. And it gets you a 19k Slug's army, so pretty much anything in the deck that has a cost lower than 4 is a 19k or less card, so you can play any of them free of charge. And then next we got 3 copies of Wings supporting the Master's Wish. So it's got 4k unique and blocker. It's permanent is why it's the most useful. Is when activating the Rejuvenate skill on one of your green Unison cards, like King Piccolo, if you lead it as a green Slug's army card and your opponent has 7 more cards in hand, reduce the number of markers removed by that skill by 1. So instead of paying the 4 markers for Rejuvenate, you're paying 3. Which is good because it means that your Unison can stay on the board for longer. And then if he activates his blocker skill, you and your opponent draw a card. I didn't think about this before, but I'd probably up him to 4 and maybe bump one of these down, but it's also just good to have the Slug. So, down to preference. And finally in 1-drops we have 4 copies of Wings, the morale booster. So you've got Barrier, and the permanent of you can only have 1 in play, and you reduce the cost of your Slug's army cards in your hand by 1. And in fact it's at 4 because you want to see him first turn to make everything else of yours cheaper to play. So next in our 2 costs, we've got our super combo for the deck, which is Gyoshu, Invader of Earth. Come down here. Come. Good boy. So, like I said, it's a super combo, and it works on the fact of if your leader is green and you have a green Unison card in play, when it's used in the combo, you draw a card, then at the end of the battle, you choose one of your green Unisons with Rejuvenate in its skill text and place it under there from the owner's drop. So, obviously King Piccolo just has it as an ability. But if your Unison would gain Rejuvenate through any of its skills, that also counts. He's only got 5k, but he gives you a card and it places himself under your Unison so you have a Rejuvenate target. Which is why I run it at 4, because the deck does rely on the Rejuvenate skill a fair amount. Next, we've got 2 copies of Metamatcher, Invader of Earth. So it's 2 cost 10k, and he's got active main, you pay 1 green. If your leader is a Slug's army card and all of your energy is mono green, and you send this card from your drop to your warp, you add up to 1 card from your left to your hand, you play a meta token, so it will just be a 5k token. Then you and your opponent draw 2 cards. At the end of your turn, your opponent places up to 2 cards from the hand to the bottom of the deck, and then you can't use the active main on another copy of his card. So, it's just good in the fact that it does the Slug thing of putting cards in your opponent's hand and putting cards in your hand, and it gives you a token and a bit of self-awakening should you need it. Next 2-drop is 3 copies of Zayn the Loyal. Not sure if that's how you say his name. It's just a 5k blocker that if you have Slug army in your battle leader area, you can play it for free. So if you're running a Slug leader, it's a free blocker. Need I say more? Moving on to the 3-drops now. We've got 2 copies of Lord Slug Thwarter of Plans. This is something I'd run more of, but I've literally just got 2. So you've got Deflect and 15k, then you've got 2 autos. The first being Bond 2, if you lead a Slug's army card. When your opponent uses a card in their hand in a combo, you may place that card in its own drop area. If you do, you and your opponent draw a card and then you negate the skill for the turn. So if they try to go down in cards to stop your effects from going off, you can just be like, well, get rid of that combo and have a card. So then they're stuck back on the 7 or however many. And secondary auto is if it's removed from your battle area by an opponent's skill or is KO'd. If your opponent has 7 more cards in hand, you can play up to 1 green Slug's army card with an edge cost of 1 from your drop area. So again, it's just a thing that gets out your tiny boys, which is useful, but you mostly run it for the first ability. It's basically a combo killer. And then you have 3 copies of Wings Invader of Earth. It's got 19k, and then Permanent Bond 2. If this card is in rest mode, mono green Slug's army cards in your battle area can't be KO'd by your opponent's skills. So it's just a nice defensive card as long as you swing it, which you probably will because he's 19k, so he's awkward. But if you have another Thwarter of Plans, you could probably trade one of these out for it. Next we got our 4-drops. So we have 4 copies of Lord Slug Dark Parasite. This is 4-cost Slug Xeno. It's got 20k power, and it's got the auto of if your opponent has 3 or more energy, when this card is played, your opponent may choose one of their Unison cards and place it in the owner's drop. If they didn't, you and your opponent draw a card and then they KO all their battle cards. So it gives your opponent an ultimatum of either losing their Unison card or both of you drawing a card but then they lose their battle cards. It's very nasty and it's a very good on-play skill. So try to utilise it as best you can, especially if they're relying a lot on their Unison for their skills, or something that will just help them play the game in general. And then we've got 3 copies of Lord Slug Young again, which were out of frame. So he's got 20k power and then auto bond 2. So if you have 2 or more Slug's army in play, when you play this card, if your opponent, well, if your leader is Slug's army, I don't know what I was going to say if your opponent, you can choose one Slug's army card with an edge cost of 3 or less than you drop, play it, then you get one of your energy back in active mode. So he becomes a 3 cost instead of the 4. Or if you have the morale booster Wings out, you essentially pay 2 to play him because you'll get an energy back and you'll get a card out from your drop area. So just a very useful card. For the 5-drop we have 3 copies of Lord Slug Monstrous Muscle. So he's got Deflect, Double Strike, 30k power, and 2 auto abilities. The first being, when this card is played, choose all of your opponent's battle cards and KO them, then choose one of your opponent's Unison cards and remove 2 markers from it. So very nasty on place. And its other auto is once per turn, when your opponent activates a counter-attack skill, your opponent chooses 6 cards in their hand and discards the rest, then you and your opponent draw a card. So, it doesn't say on this guy's attack, it just says whenever. So, whichever first attack you decide to negate, you can just go, right, dump 6 and draw 1 card. And then you can decide to swing this guy afterwards because you've cleared most of that hand. So, it is a very punishing card, and it's very good for the deck, obviously. And then finally, we have 3 copies of our 6-drop Lord Slug Out of Control. So he's got 25k in Triple Strike. EX evolved by paying 2 green onto a Lord Slug Xeno with an energy cost of 4. Permanent, whilst the card's in rest mode, your opponent cannot attack leader or unison cards. So until this guy is gone, your leader and your unison is safe from any attacks. And then his auto is, when this card is removed from your battle by an opponent's skill, you play up to 1 Slug's Army card with an energy cost of 3 from your drop, and then you add 1 Dark Dragon Ball from your drop to your hand. So when he gets KO'd by skill, you can get a card from your drop in play and a card from your drop in hand, so that you can try and build your way back into another one of these if you've got a 3-drop Slug in play, for example. So with that, guys, that is the end of my Lord Slug deck profile. So as always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.